Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the City of Bettendorf. Today is a special Committee of the Whole meeting for our 2022-2023 budget. Today is Monday, February 7th. It's 5:00 p.m. Thank you all for being here. We appreciate all your work to put this budget together, and we're excited to take a look at some highlights and then spend some time with our books that we love so much. Thank you very much for putting all of that material together for us, the folks in finance. And with that, I will hand it over to our City Administrator, Decker Plain, and our Director of Finance, Mr. Jason Schatt. Gentlemen, you have the floor.
Thank you, Your Honor. Before we get started, we've got a couple staff members that we want to make sure that you probably don't see much that Jason introduces, so if you want to.
Sure. As the mayor mentioned, a lot of work goes into the materials that we'll review tonight and in the coming days. And I need to thank my staff, two of which are here tonight. Calissa Malin in the back, Julie Moore right here. All had their hands on a lot of the work you see in front of you. So big thanks to them and everybody in the department.
Absolutely, thank you.
Before we get started, Your Honor, to kind of set the table.
27 years in a row?
So the Distinguished Budget Award, which Jason has here, I think we are 27, and this baby is heavy.
Yeah.
So you raise it up.
So
Oh, they don't even give new ones anymore? They just send you a little
Give you the
medallion
tab.
to stick it on there? They're tired of giving us that thing? 27 times is one too many?
One more spot.
Okay.
I don't know what happens after that.
You probably just go back to the top and put the little medallion over the last medallion, the oldest medallion, start rotating them.
So that's the Government Finance Officers Award. So the budget and the CAFR both get submitted to the GFOA. Those are people throughout the country, actually across North America, that review our documents and indicate they're a neutral body. They are other finance officers, other administrators throughout North America and Canada who look at that and say that that document meets the highest standards for any organization, any government organization, and we've gotten that award 27 years in a row. So the document that we put in front of you, the document, the ending document, and what's on the website is as good as it gets in the country. And then today, as a matter of fact, or this was on my desk today when I got back, this is the Certificate of Achievement to Bettendorf, Iowa, in recognition of its use of performance data and local government management, including training, verification, and public reporting. And this was given at the ICMA conference in Portland in October, which I didn't go get this year, as we were having Lyle at that point in time. So this is about our 10th year, I think, for this award from the International City Managers. So it relates to the budget documents that you're getting as well. So those are two, I think, milestones for us to know that the documents that we are submitting are being recognized by the professionals in this field as the best practices anywhere in the country, which we think is noteworthy. And then before Jason gets started with all the work, I just want to thank the department heads for all their work. This is probably the most exciting of my 32 budgets. And I can say that with...
Because you spent 10 days in Hawaii while they did the work?
That's right.
Again, thank you, good job.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It actually funds, with all the growth that we had, and Jason's going to talk about this, this funds roughly 10 new positions, which are a direct result of the census changeover and the new revenues that come with that. That's an exciting time because we can literally catch up to where our growth is, we think, or get close to that. It's not often we get to do that. And we've been prudent for the longest time, and now both our growth and our revenue matches up so that we can do that and provide great service to our community. So this is an exciting time for us to be able to present this opportunity and still keep our levy rate at a very manageable level. And so I'm excited about it. I hope you'll be excited about it. I think you will be. And we're going to do a lot of great things this year. We've come off a great year last year, getting lots of things done despite the pandemic and the derecho and the hailstorm. And now we've got some exciting new growth that's propelling us forward. So with that, I'm going to give it to Jason. He'll do the bulk of the presentation, and I'll just jump in when I think it's appropriate.
You know, the next time we have an opportunity to have this kind of excitement would be 2030, and if you play your cards right, you might be able to be part of the team when we have this excitement once again.
If you promise I can have a motorized wheelchair, I think I might be able
Oh,
to,
that's easy.
might be able to make that happen.
By then, we'll all have them.
That's right.
Kathleen will have worked that into the budget.
I think we have one on site now.
All right, so Jason, it's all yours.
All right. Thank you, first of all, for coming out for a special committee of the whole to accommodate our budget schedule. As Decker said, I think we have a very exciting budget to present to you tonight. And the word of the day, the word of the year is growth. Bettendorf is growing. That's no secret to any of us in this room. We're seeing that in new construction, valuation, and population. And that new growth is going to allow us to do a few things with this fiscal year 22-23 budget. One is reduce the levy rate 15 cents from $12.80 to $12.65, and that might not be the most exciting part of the budget. Usually if I was able to report that to you, I think that might be the most exciting part, but we're also going to get a lot of other cool stuff done due to the growth. Assessed values across every class are up 8.5%. Average existing home is up 6% this year. But taxable values are up just 4.8% due to the rollback, and that changed from 56.41% last year to 54.13% this year. All told, taxes on existing homes, and I'll show you the details of this a little bit later, will go up less than 1% even with our levy rate reduction. We take advantage of those census adjustments to fund needed additions to staff. As you know, the population as of 2020 was 39,102, up 17.7% in 10 years. And that affords us an increased allocation of sales tax and road use tax. And we'll use that money in the general fund and in the road use fund. That new revenue allows us to hire 3 police officers, 3 additional firefighters, parks maintenance, an inspections staff member, a GIS tech, and an IT analyst, among a few other staffing changes.
We have talked about those staffing needs, and you can, as you go forward, tell us what those needs are, but just so that people who may see this is something that's been requested and we've worked on, and we've had an informational meeting so that we have been brought up to speed on the need for these new hires.
Absolutely. We continue to do our best to limit the impact of utility fee increases. And in fact, this year we're recommending no change in the solid waste fee for most residents. There's a little bit of a caveat to that one, and I'll walk you through that a little bit later. We continue with our 4% pace of increases in the sanitary sewer rate and a 20-cent increase in stormwater, all of those effective April 1. Really exciting part of the budget is the funding of the IT strategic plan, which was presented to council during committee of the whole last week. As you saw, that plan calls for a lot of really great work to be done in the next 5 years, and we can get that kick-started right away in fiscal year 22-23 with the beginning stages of a financial system replacement. And then finally, we continue to fund that aggressive CIP. This year, you'll see big projects including Forest Grove Road, playgrounds, moving that funding up to a level where we can get about 2 playgrounds done a year, and then entry signs, which has been a priority of council for the past couple of years. We've got that funded. Here is a table of those staffing changes, Your Honor, beginning at the top with that IT analyst. I can note on this one because IT falls under finance. As part of that IT strategic plan, the IT needs assessment did identify that staffing was a little short in our IT department, and we'd like to bulk that up a little bit and ideally select an individual that has some cybersecurity background, really to help us along in that realm. I think the need for police officers and firefighters has been well stated, and we can add 3 of each of those. The GIS tech will serve not only Public Works, but also some of our community development efforts. So that $91,000 will be split about 4 ways across 4 funds. We have the request for a part-time traffic tech to help our traffic signal technician, a parks equipment operator that has been in the 5-year plan but delayed for several years, and a couple of changes to staffing at Palmer Hills, a couple of part-time floor assistants at the Family Museum, and then finally that combination inspector and community development that will handle both
Rental inspection.
code enforcement, rental inspection, and building inspection duties. Sorry.
Jason, the budget impact is the total amount for each of these positions, including any of the benefits. Is that right?
Yes.
Yep, these are fully loaded.
It's typically how you do it. I just want to make it clear. Thank you.
And in the case of, for example, police and fire, this includes the first year training and
Training,
outfitting.
outfit, guns, everything.
Yep,
Awesome.
everything, everywhere.
I just want to see that number. Thank you.
When we start the budget process, we have to start in our internal service funds, and the 2 big ones there are the health insurance fund and the risk management fund. FY 22-23 health insurance is going to cost just over $4 million. That's net of city employee contributions and a couple of other revenue sources, and up about 7% from the current year, which is up about 7% from last year. Factors keeping healthcare costs stable, and I'll take you down to actually the next line. Our 6-year average increase in claims is just 2%, which is extremely good. We've had a lot of good experience for probably the last 4 or 5 years in claims, and when you couple that with the fact that we've added a few employees here and there and kept that claim number to 2% growth is really strong. And helps keep those costs stable going forward. We continue to realize the savings from breaking the plan apart, those better network discounts, and the wellness program.
Brian runs
And also just to point out that at the bottom, the 1.8 million in cash reserves, that's a big deal because the attachment point, trying to keep 125% of our claims in a separate reserve. When we started that fund 30 years ago, that fund was like at $500,000. Now it's grown and is strong in terms of if by chance claims weren't covered, you still have that reserve fund that will kick in and take care of that. And we've upped the specific stop loss from 70 to 90. That's just been pretty much with the marketplace. But that's a good thing to note, that we have very solid cash reserves. That's in addition to the general fund. Lots of cities fund this with their general fund. We've chosen to fund it with a separate cash reserve.
And correct me if I'm wrong, going up with those losses from $70,000 to $90,000 that we stopgap gives us an opportunity to buy down the secondary insurance, right? Because we're taking more of the loss based upon our ability to cover it with the 125% in cash reserve.
That's exactly right.
Say that again.
Very observant, Your Honor.
I just want to make sure I understand it. I thought I did. Saving money on the other hand.
You're doing great. Keep the cue cards rolling.
Our risk management fund handles the liability insurance needs for and liability costs for the city. The renewal was just approved, this will be approved later this spring. Property tax casualty insurance is expected to go up about 13.5% or $53,000. That's really just due to the statewide experience that ICAP has had over the last couple of years. We've had a couple of our own claims, but claims statewide are up, and those costs are now reflected in our premiums.
And that's a huge amount, frankly, based on derecho, and it affected almost all the cities from Des Moines over, and the claims that they all had, including us, that affected that for the most part.
Do we anticipate, if you know, or Kathleen, if you know, moving forward after those claims are paid, that those, you kind of get a settling back into the typical market range?
We would expect that. This is fairly cyclical. The derecho really
Sure.
affected everybody pretty strongly. So we would expect that it would level out.
As soon as you gotta watch material prices though.
True.
So even now, if you have another one,
You've got an increased cost
I think it's gonna be an increase.
of remedying the damage. Okay.
Workers' compensation fees are increasing about 7% or $38,000. But we still think that that insurance is priced well enough that maintaining a zero deductible in workers' comp is advantageous to the city. So the first dollar in those workers' compensation claims is coming from the insurance company. So really helps to stabilize our own budget.
And we've done that analysis based upon what we think. Yeah, okay, thanks.
So here are your various property tax levies, down 15 cents in total from the year before, from 1280 to 1265. But the different components, as you work your way down the table from the general fund, you can see the general fund is at 573, well below the 810 state cap. This allows us about 30% of capacity to levy additional taxes in the general fund, or almost $6.3 million that taxes that are available to us that we are not levying. The health insurance, as we noted, claims experience there has been really well. Costs are going up, but not so much that we have to increase the levy rate there. We're actually going to reduce the health insurance levy by a couple of pennies. Liability insurance is going up a penny. Police and fire pension is down a whole nickel. The city's contribution rate to the police and fire pension is moving from about 26% in the current year down to 23% next year. So that was a significant savings, if you can use that word.
Market?
Market.
Yeah. So
Market
that-
investments, both for 411 and for IPERS have been up significantly. And so investment income has allowed the contributions to come down. Again, cyclical. We've been as high as 32, almost 33%. We've never, with the merger from the original systems that were locally managed at 16%, we've never been below 20, I don't believe, in the last 20 years.
I think the minimum for us is 19, and we've never sniffed it.
No. Based on the increase in the market values, are we getting closer to 100% covered? So that will help you on, I mean, that comes back every year from Moody's, and they say, well, you're not, your pension fund is not
IPERS, I
100%.
saw the IPERS newsletter yesterday. They were going to 89%. And I'm not sure where 411 is. It's in the 80s.
They're a little bit behind IPERS, but moving in the same direction. They both have a goal of eliminating that unfunded liability. So, and that's the number we get reported.
Yeah, every time.
Yep.
But again, we can make the argument, we do make the argument, it's a state-funded system. There's no requirement over and above the contribution we make that we're liable for. There'd have to be a catastrophic failure in the system for it to come back to us. And right now, on the way the programs are both designed, that's not in the mechanism.
And they've got a fully funded set of reserves. They've got a rainy day fund, and they have the taxing authority to go get the money if they had to go get the money.
And their actual assumptions are different than Moody's, and Moody's argues differently, and we're just stuck in the middle of that.
Yes, sir. I recognize. Okay.
We're going to continue to take advantage of some of the increased federal funding for the transit system over the next couple of years. So we think we can limit that levy to 16 cents. But as I noted to you a couple weeks ago, I would anticipate us having to build that levy back up to about 20 cents in the next couple of years. So keep that in mind as we work through this. So the total of those first 5 levy rates there, which I know as the operating levies, those are the levies, the taxes we levy in order to pay our people, turn our lights on, do the great work of the city. Total of that is $780. That's among the lowest of the operating levies of those 38 cities that we like to compare to. And then finally, the debt service levy, which was $5 here in the current year, we are recommending reducing that to $4.85. There is your 15-cent decrease in taxes. And the reason we're able to do that is just the incredible growth in value. We're getting more dollars for every nickel that we levy, so that we don't have to levy as much in the debt service levy to service that outstanding debt. So that's kind of an exciting thing. I've been telling you we were getting close to that for the past couple of years, And I think we're finally there. So all told, everything everywhere, total levy rate, city levy rate of $12.65. And of course, that makes up just about a third of a Bettendorf resident's tax bill. Obviously, the school districts and the counties and a couple of other jurisdictions have levying authority as well. But with the other levies available to us that we do not use, as I mentioned, 6.3 in the general fund, but about 4 million more available to us. So there's $10.3 million of taxes that we could go get if you ever had to. Obviously, it is not our intention to have to ever do that.
Jason, we had talked a little bit about the debt service, understanding that our tax increment financing plans with those who are doing developments they have to pay the debt service, which would be at 5. This rolls it back to 485. Did you have opportunities with council, or do you want to kind of go through that real quick, what your thinking was, letting the debt service come down to 15 instead of taking it from someplace else?
Yeah, so when we evaluate some of those TIF arrangements, we certainly do look at the debt levy as a piece of the city's return on that investment, right? I think my view and the view that I would recommend to you is it's probably more important for us to cut the tax levy for the 13,000 homes around
Absolutely.
town, because that is probably more effective to them in that way than the 15 cents is to us in our debt service fund.
And because it's in the debt service, you couldn't move that 15 cents out from someplace else. In other words, take 15 cents from debt service, put it in the general fund, reduce the general fund on the backside to give the taxpayers back the 15 cents because it's its own siloed fund.
Right.
Which is why it's separate and distinct from the tax increment financing deals we've done.
Yep.
But it's a great observation that as we do our TIF deals, it's important for us on those TIF deals to get as much of the debt service as possible. But again, that's a finite picture with a finite group of people versus the entire set of constituencies, and the analysis is about the same. So from our perspective, a little tax relief to the majority of those tax holders is probably as good an idea, if not.
Yeah, thank you.
Your Honor,
Yes, sir.
would it not be technically possible to leave the debt levy at $5 on a 1-year loan and lower your general fund levy? The point where you still have your tax increment financing technically paying,
Good question.
helping more. So then your debt levy would stay at 5. You take a 1-year loan and you're paying it off in 1 year, and your general fund levy would then drop 15 cents. You're just flipping them, but not giving it to a particular group that's not necessarily paying property taxes.
That might require Jason getting a new account. That's a great question.
We've had this conversation before, because I always told him, I think the first time I got elected, I said, eventually you're gonna have to get out of the debt levy and into the general fund, because it's just gonna catch up to us eventually.
Right.
And then Jerry told me 1 year, you don't want to drop the debt levy because of the TIF. And I'm like, okay, well then here's the solution halfway in between. You actually don't drop the debt levy, you leave the debt levy, but loan the money in a 1-year form. Yes, you're using debt money to pay operations, but it's really just sleight of hand, because
I would have.
That's a bond council question,
Yeah.
I think.
The other thought is, are our agreements with the folks who get the tax increment financing and therefore return the increment, do they say $5 or do they say the debt levy?
Debt levy.
So when we move the debt levy, they pay that debt levy up or down. So that takes my idea out. Yours is still on the table. Yeah, Jerry.
So in future agreements, could we change that and set a fixed amount in future agreements as opposed to using the word debt levy?
Under bond law, I don't think if you're gonna issue debt, that you're gonna give them monies from the TIF revenue, I don't think you could do that.
Yeah, we cannot do that.
all right, you guys
There you
both
go.
got poo-poo. My idea's still working so far.
You're still on the table.
Right, you're still working.
I got one that might actually work, and I got.
Your
him
idea
to
is an interesting idea, but I think bond council's gonna have to help us.
Give me till Saturday. I need to understand a little better if the debt levy is specific to long-term debt. I think that'll be our hangup, but give me till Saturday to figure that out.
Friday noon at the.
Depends upon the definition of long-term debt too.
That's true.
It's a.
According to a tax accountant, I can tell you that
It's a
6-month
unique
loan is
question.
long-term debt.
You've come a long way, Grasshopper.
Ready for your next big thing.
45 minutes.
So how does that levy rate and those taxes that we levy for fiscal year 22-23 affect the average home and the average commercial property? Average, and I want to give a caveat here because I showed you a version of this a couple weeks ago that said we were going to move up about $26 on the average home. That calculation was a little flawed, I'll admit, it was my own, because it included the value of new construction. And that's not what we're getting at here. We're talking about existing. So I want to point out the average existing value is up 6%. The rollback, as I said, was reduced to 54% from 56, and we are recommending the levy be reduced to 1265. So what does that mean? The mean value home in Bettendorf for this fiscal year is 266,937. So that impact, the impact of that change in value would add about $114 to that property's tax bill. The reduction in the rollback would take away $78 of that 114. And then the reduction of the city's levy rate takes away another 21. So the total impact on that home is just $15 or 0.88%. So that's that less than 1% that I noted at the top. On commercial, we did a little digging, and rather than just throw a $500,000 number up there, which we've shown you in the past, we looked at mean values of commercial properties, and it's right around $1 million. Average existing value on commercial was up 5.5%. The rollback remains 90%, and we recommend reducing that levy rate. So the impact in value change on a just over $1 million commercial property is plus $623 in taxes paid for fiscal year 22-23. The rollback hasn't changed, so that doesn't have an impact. But the levy rate change does wipe out $140 of that $623 for a total increase in taxes of $483 or 4.26%. But again, I want to point out this is on $1 million commercial property, not the $500,000 that we've shown you in the past. The most important note, which you've heard me say before, is in the yellow box at the bottom. 61% of all tax dollars, new tax dollars, that we will raise in fiscal year 2022-23 are attributable to that new construction. So that's new value, new buildings in the city.
When you say new tax dollars, do you mean only of all that stuff that's been constructed? So the other 39% would be commercial, industrial? Or are you, or to make up the 100, you get the current taxable? No, it's just all only new.
It's our total tax dollars, which you'll see on a resolution here in a couple weeks, are going up, I believe, about $1.8 million, round numbers,
Because of the new.
because of the, just everything everywhere.
Okay.
The levy rates, everything.
That takes into, yep,
61% of that 1.8 million is because of the new.
okay. Thank you. I now understand.
Here's our property taxes in the current year, FY 21-22, as compared to some of the other cities around the Quad Cities. And you can see we've kept our spots there at the lowest end, both school districts. I've color-coded them based on their school colors, just to draw your attention there.
Very nice.
Did a
Had a
good
little
job.
fun?
None of that blue around here sometimes.
But you can see how we rate against Davenport schools, Moline, and Moline schools in Rock Island. A Davenport property at $250,000 is going to pay almost $900 more in taxes than a Bettendorf property of the same value. And over in Rock Island, it's almost $4,000 more in property taxes for the same valued home.
You still have no money.
This is the key slide that you always want to hear, I think. Was everything everywhere?
And we'll get into the details on the utility fees, but this is the impact of property taxes, sewer fees, stormwater fees, and solid waste fees. So this is what I kind of term the cost of living in Bettendorf, because everybody pays these. Your property taxes on that $266,000 home are going up $15, just like we showed you on the previous slide. Sewer fees going up to $369, or it's a 14-cent increase per unit per 100 cubic feet of flow, will cost that homeowner $12.36 more this coming year than they do in the current year. Stormwater fees will cost that homeowner $2.40 more next year than this year. We're recommending no change to solid waste fees, so no change there. Total increase on that home then, taxes and fees, is just over $30 for the year, just over $2.50 a month. Annual cost of services then, if you add up all these fees, all these taxes, $2,423, that's up just 1.3% on that mean valued home.
Won't be long and that'll be the
Remember
price
that-
of a gallon of gasoline.
Remember that $12.36 change in the sewer fees are pursuant our obligations to the consent decree for the wastewater treatment plant and other appurtenances in our sanitary sewer system that we're obligated to fulfill to keep ourselves in line with that decree. And we will have for you upcoming at the end of the month both the sanitary sewer study of the entire city, but primarily that northern section of what the future of sanitary sewer needs to look like, and then later down the road, a new rate study that we did in tandem with that. And that will be our future. This is what we need to accomplish right now. So the total annual cost of service, and I think this is important because we'll show this again against those 38 cities, is $2,423, or only 1.3% increase for all those services. And obviously, it's up 4.2% for commercial.
So we'll talk about each of the fees and the utilities, and I'll start in solid waste. It should be the easiest one because we're recommending no fee increase, but you know me, I like to complicate things. You will see in the coming weeks a proposed solid waste ordinance change that will phase out the 32-gallon carts over the next several years. And Brian, feel free to jump in if I'm going astray, but 32-gallon carts are actually about impossible for us to get our hands on now. If we had to replace them, I think the cost was going to be $189,000 all at once. So the idea being that we will continue to service those carts, but any new accounts, any cart replacements will be done with a 64-gallon cart. As part of phasing those out, Public Works is recommending that we actually phase out the twice per month pickups first, and we would do that by increasing that fee over the next 3 years until it matched there in by April 1 of 2024, it would match the 32-gallon weekly pickup. So you'd continue to pick up those carts, service those carts just the same. But as they break, as people move, as new people move in, we won't be replacing them with 32s. So eventually, all the 32s will kind of work their way out of the system.
And we'll talk to you more in detail about the ordinance and the changes necessary and how this works. But what we've done is position the financing pursuant Brian's plan. Even if you change the plan by chance, from a monetary standpoint, the phase out we recommend still occur, and we can handle a different couple scenarios within reason. But we won't be able to get this can any longer without significant cost. It'll be customized if we have to do that. We think it makes more sense. And from an operational standpoint, we're seeing people stuff these things so that we can't empty them. They push them too far. The bottom of the can is designed so that it's thinner at the bottom, so it gets wedged, and we have to get out to empty it, and it's becoming literally a manual nightmare for our guys. So we believe that the better course of valor is to move to the 65-gallon as the ultimate solution on the short side of the pickup. But we'll work your way through that with the ordinance change and make sure we're all good with that.
Here's a look at just our solid waste charges compared to those 38 or 37 other cities around the state that have populations of at least 10,000. The average is $220 a year and cost to the resident for solid waste charges. We're at $227, so right there, kind of in that middle of the pack range. In stormwater, we are recommending a 20-cent increase, which we've done for the past couple of years. That would take that rate from $5.20 to $5.40. And then as you see on this chart, as we move out towards FY 25-26 and 26-27, we get to the point where the stormwater fee could kind of remain at $6, and we could probably sustain that fund there for a while, depending on the intensity of capital projects. But it does look today like $6 would kind of be the tipping point there for the stormwater fund, which is exciting. On stormwater, you'll see we are at the higher end. The average cost of stormwater in the 38 cities is $64 per year. In Bettendorf, it's at 78. But again, a lot like sewer, this has been project driven. And as more and more stormwater projects are identified, it takes a little bit more of a fee. So.
What's interesting, if you look at this, is the stormwater fee. There's a number of cities that don't charge any stormwater fee. But then if you look at where they position themselves in their sanitary fee, they're much higher on their sanitary fee. And some of them cover it in the general fund. Some of it try to cover it, I think, as a combination in their sanitary fund. So we look a little bit higher there, but if you look at where we stand on the sewer utility, we're a lot lower by comparison. So I think there's a cover move there in both directions.
There are probably broad variables about what these cities do for their constituents too, and so this is a little bit, vague and undefinable, right? I mean,
Right.
It is, that's true.
I would argue we're probably one of the more proactive stormwater communities, and most of the larger cities are. But yes, to your point, some of these might be street cleaning. It might be the extent of their stormwater activities.
well, even back to your solid waste, like I would challenge that other cities probably don't do as aggressive a bulky waste program.
Absolutely.
And our value, although it's $7 more, is off the charts in terms of what our residents receive. So service, value is there.
Yeah, I think you could probably have a handful of bulky waste collection like ours or electronic equipment pickup at the curb. That just isn't happening in most cities. So what we offer for value is pretty strong. And a lot of cities are still doing the twice a year, throw everything out for a 2-week window, and they'll pick everything up. And as we know, that is a crazy way to do it. And our residents find it much more convenient to do it 52 weeks a year, and we find a better way to pick it up at that way.
All right. Moving on to sanitary sewer, we're recommending that 4% increase, which is 14 cents this year, to $3.69 per 100 cubic feet of flow. And I note here, 4% increases will sustain the operations, capital, and debt obligations of the sewer fund for several years as we know the project today. Capital projects, especially those at the wastewater treatment plant and those related to, the expansion of our own system, will certainly require an increase in fees probably above that 4% range. But we're currently working with Baker Tilly and McClure Engineering, who just did a sewer study to analyze our fees and come up with a rate plan that builds in the cost of all of these very expensive projects that maybe aren't necessarily programmed yet, but they're on the horizon. So we look forward to sharing that with you when it's complete. But for our work here for the budget for 22-23, we don't need to consider that just yet. A 4% increase will keep us going. And as Decker alluded, here is this is just sanitary sewer charges now on an annual basis in those 38 cities. And you can see we're in the second lowest spot at $336 a year for sanitary sewer charges. The average is $544, but you can see there are some cities that are much, much higher than that, just due to the capital projects that they've had to undertake, so. Can't really look at any one of these things in a vacuum. I think you gotta kind of pull it all together. All right.
I'd like to look at it in the back.
And just to go back to that point, the infrastructure improvements that we've made in lining sewers, and we got rid of our combined sewer system probably 10, 15 years ago. All the changes that we've been making and doing prior to the consent decree and with the consent decree have helped us get here because we're much more efficient in terms of how much infrastructure we have to replace. All the work that Brian and his team have done have helped keep this at a manageable level and a nice financial level.
As we've noted for several years now, we like to say we're lean and mean on the operations side. And that $7.80 portion of the levy that I talked about at the top is what I show here, along with those user fees. So when you add the user fees and the utilities and the operating levy together, that would cost that average home $1,779 a year, which is the lowest among these 38 cities. It's just a matter of prioritization. And on the next chart, I'll note that our debt levy is the highest among the 38 cities. I think context is important when you look at this chart. Again, we can't look at this in a vacuum. It doesn't necessarily mean that we have the most debt or that we have high taxes. We have simply prioritized investing in our capital infrastructure over adding to our operating capacity for the past several years. I think that's what the two charts together show us. So I think while it's important to look at it and know that we're at the high end here, context is key. Speaking of that context, what is that debt going to do for us in 2022? As you know, you've been working through the various resolutions related to our bond sale the past couple of weeks. We have $16.7 million in GO bonds up for sale on March 1st, and this is what those bonds will pay for. Notably, street reconstruction and Forest Grove Road is the bulk of that $4 million number right there in the middle. Actually, I've got Forest Grove Road, whoops, 3.7 million Forest Grove Road. So the street reconstruction, now $4 million, is separate from that. Tanglewood will be done, traffic signals, fire truck, Palmer Hills improvements, and then $2.5 million in sanitary sewers. So another busy construction season in 2022.
We keep putting the same amounts in sidewalk and alley, and I know I sound like a broken record, Brian, but if we need to switch those, or if we don't need those, or if that money needs to go to resurfacing or reconstruction, move it around instead of keep it as a silo that we as a council put a certain dollar figure, and we trust you to do that. I say it every year because it bothers me that we just put the same amount here and say, okay, that's what you get to play with. I'd rather say, you know what, we don't need, we've been kicking butt on alleys, but we really need this resurfacing on, because this bad street like Greenbrier popped up. Just my yearly suggestion.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. You do mention it yearly, and we do our best to manage it. Just keep in mind when you're talking alleys and street resurfacing and street reconstruction and full depth patch, that's all road use dollars. We throw the silo in there, but as we see prices adjust or priorities change, we continually work with Jason and his team to maybe downsize the resurfacing program and uptick a full depth patch program or add another street. Let's just say it happened several times over the past few years where we were actually just going in there and gonna mill off a couple inches on a street and do a resurfacing job, but all of a sudden, the whole base failed underneath it, which then caused us to reprioritize our needs and do a full reconstruction on that particular street. So even though that we have them siloed out in here, Your Honor, we adjust them periodically through the course of the year based on prioritization needs
Okay.
of what we
Good.
see out in the field.
Most of these funds are earmarked. What kind of bang for your buck do you get on a $1 million street resurfacing budget, Brian?
Typically, I think we get like 6 or 7 streets a year. Right now, what we're noticing, Bill, is that we're finding more of the streets in the southwest part of town that will not support just a mill and an overlay. We have to go in and reconstruct them in their entirety. So what we're doing is we're actually coming in and tearing them out and doing concrete curb and gutter, and then actually doing a full depth asphalt section through there, very similar to what we were doing in the alleys.
And we've also found, and Bill knows this, I think, we still have some subdivisions that were built relatively a short period ago, but they were built not to a drainable base standard. I'll use the Halcyon neighborhood, for example. We've almost rebuilt that subdivision by virtue of most of that subdivision was built slab on grade. And we got a street in here this year, and I think it's maybe Halcyon.
Yes.
Well, you got Deerbrook that was
Yeah.
prior to the drainable base.
Exactly.
You've got a lot of residential streets out there.
Really, what we would think would be upscale streets, but built to a really inferior standard.
Right.
That now are failing, like we saw when my older part of town up by Hoover and off of Greenbrier, where maybe they were better soils that lasted longer, but clearly drainable base makes a big difference in the capacity, and then the ability to resurface it down the road makes a lot of sense.
I think you're just getting older. Some of the roads are 40 years old.
I know. Been here too long.
Yes.
Frank,
We have somewhere in our budget system, money set aside for the trails, or is that something that's gonna show up under major projects in the coming years?
Brian?
Yeah, thank you, sir. We have monies in our CIP set aside for trails. If you remember, we kind of took a step back for the past few years and actually putting in new trails, and we've actually bolstered our CIP monies to go back in and treat the existing trails, either through resurfacing. An example of that is over the past 2 years, we've resurfaced all the way from Kimberly Road at the Davenport-Bettendorf border all the way out to, I believe, 23rd Street. So we've been doing sections all along the river that we've reconstructed to a 10-foot wide recreational trail that we've had a lot of drainage issues over the past several years because of Duck Creek flooding. We've addressed those issues. But yet, and then we have money, we use also that money to fix recreational trails that are concrete.
That's the ones I was concerned about.
And then we've, obviously, with the new reconstruction of Forest Grove Road, we're gonna have the new, we leveraged our 80-20 money with the state to pay for 2 recreational trails on each side of Forest Grove Road as we move through the intersection of Middle Road and out to the east to eventually connect to the school.
Plus, those are built with drainable base, are they?
They are built.
So those separated trails are also built with drainable base. So from a weight standpoint, the only thing we're really putting on those is a pickup truck to plow them. So they should theoretically last quite a long time versus the trails, the recreational trails, which were just asphalt on grade. A little tiny piece.
Yeah, it looks like where we're having problems are along agricultural areas that we put the trails. For example, I've already seen damage on Hopewell, where we've got Public Works markers out there to be careful in those areas. And it appears that maybe some of the drainage coming out of there has affected these trails. And I just didn't know where those fit in to the program. Thank you.
So if I can belabor this a little bit, we got 8 million in Forest Grove this year. Is that gonna catch us up to a point to where we can start spending some money back in the inner city on some of this
And I
infrastructure that really needs some attention?
Well, remember, Bill, that
typo there too, where it's Forest Grove is in parentheses, that should not be there. The 4 million is in other street reconstruction.
Okay,
And
all right.
we can give you the list of which streets those are, but, yep, just a mistake on our part.
and correct me if I'm wrong, but the Forest Grove Road, is that the 20% versus the 80%? Or is that the total
That is
project cost?
just our portion of it, yeah.
Right.
Also, keep in mind, I just want to just kind of touch base real quick on this, is that it's been several years since we've actually had C-Tree, the Center for Transportation Research and Education, drive our streets. They did drive all of our street network last fall. We should be getting that data this spring. I think the last time that I did a presentation to you on our pavement strategic plan that we put together back in 2016, once I get that information together, I'll disseminate the data and then have a presentation to you at council to kind of see where we stand on all the monies that we've been actually putting towards our street and how it has adjusted our pavement condition index over those years. And then it'll actually show you a color-coded map of areas where that'll have identified needs within the city, and then we can move forward with concentrating on those.
I can drive a few streets for you, Brian, if you need help.
We intend to do that, Bill.
On Palmer Hills improvements, my understanding is that number's not totally flushed out, or the projects that make up that 700, you're still working on that?
Correct.
And then the 2.5 million there on sanitary sewers, does that include the McClure study? It doesn't, does it? Or
It does not
It does
include
not.
those projects yet. And those will be presented at a later time.
That includes our sanitary sewer lining program, but plus all the work that's being currently done at the wastewater treatment plant in order to receive the growth of both our cities.
Yeah, that's everything everywhere for sanitary sewers.
Okay. So we like to take a look at debt by a couple of measures. And you can see there highlighted it, by the end of FY 22-23, our GO debt outstanding will be just about 122 million when you combine GO and enterprise GO, which is just 51% of the legal debt limit set by the state, the 5% of full assessed valuation. Within the last 10 years, I would say, that number was up in the 70% and even at one point over 80%. So that has swiftly come down, and as you can see going forward, continues to fall. Obviously, this is based on the debt that we have planned today that we intend to issue. Any increases to that debt would certainly change this number in those out years, but the trend is good. And another note here is this is not only just a measure of outstanding debt, but obviously as our value grows, which it has grown so substantially, we get a bigger cap. So this falls quickly because, one, we're paying off more principal than we are adding each year, and two, we're growing so fast. And then down in the middle of this page, in the gold bar, you can see the total debt outstanding, right around 145 million. Creeps up in FY 23-24 just due to the repayment schedules of some of these. But the long-term trend, as you can see, is downward. And by the end of this 10 years, you're down to just shy of 124 million, so. Other capital expenditures. We noted at the top that we are gonna take advantage of the increased allocation of local option sales tax and road use tax due to the census change. On the local option sales tax, we're expecting about $1.5 million more in sales tax revenue than what we had planned for in the current year, just due to the census change, a larger than expected catch-up payment. And then in the road use fund tax, we should see about $500,000 annually increase just due to the census change. Coupling that with some excess reserves, we would like to really shore up the vehicle replacement fund and then kickstart that IT strategic plan by transferring to the formerly known electronic equipment replacement fund, and I'd like to change that to the technology fund going forward. But in fiscal year 22-23, we will do 2.4 million in new and replacement vehicles. That's a pretty big year. As you'll recall, we delayed several purchases the last couple of years due to COVID. That was one of the first things we put the brakes on. So we have several overdue pickups, dump trucks, parks maintenance vehicles that really need to be shuffled out of the fleet. 7 police vehicles, and then that heavy rescue for fire.
Jason, does the 7 police vehicles include, aren't we adding one with the new officers?
Yep. I
Equipping
believe
it and
there's
all that.
a new,
There might be 2.
new unmarked and a new marked vehicle.
Correct, yeah, for, one for the administrative lieutenant position and then one for patrol.
Yep.
Okay. One more question.
Sure.
Mr. Ryder sent out a little briefing from our people up in Des Moines, and it says something about the state's considering taking over sales tax.
There is a change recommended to how the distribution of sales tax occurs, and it may eliminate the requirement for a referendum or a re-referendum on those sales tax that have sunsets. There's a whole lot of chatter going on around the city attorneys, the city administrators, the finance directors, whether that's a good thing or not. You know, once the state gets their hands on it, the ability to then dial it back, particularly in those cases where we had referendums to get those sales tax dollars, with sunsets perhaps, or with sunset provisions that required a second referendum, we're all questioning whether or not that even can be done legally. And I'm not sure where the status is, but there's a lot of chatter going on. The league has got a lot of chatter with it. We plan to talk to Gary this week to find out how realistic this is and how it's moving. But it's clearly a discussion that's occurring.
My initial reaction to that was not a good thing.
Well, based on some histories of backfills and other
Exactly.
state-imposed things, I think it's
We've
safe to
been
say
burned lots of
we don't
times.
necessarily trust it.
Well, if they can cut taxes at the state level on the backs of the cities, it makes them look great.
Sure. This is, I just on a pure home rule perspective, I just don't like it.
Yeah.
You know, they gave us the ability to have these through referendum. We did referendums. The people passed them. They passed on the re-referendum. And now for the state to say, well, we're going to take that over and we'll control it, I don't think that bodes well necessarily for us. Particularly, as I've argued for a long time, trying to, you know, get our revenue streams diversified. If they have the ability to eliminate that, again, and then they've capped us both at the 810, they've capped us on our ability for our growth. So continue to give our ability to gain on property taxes. Just in this budget, I don't know what the calculation was, but we used to be able to get 4% growth. Now we're only at 2% growth.
Right.
So we're capped already in our ability to gain on what our growth is. If we continue to be restricted, I don't think that bodes well for any city.
Yeah, I don't like it.
Didn't with police and fire pension. They took that over for
Yep.
cities that weren't doing it right. It didn't with the educational system, with school districts who, you know, we gotta get Davenport making the same. Well, they didn't vote to make the same. They're people who want to pay the same. Now, they've seen the consequence, but
Yeah.
when the state takes it over, that's what happens.
Yeah, if we can argue loudly against this, I just don't, I have not been convinced yet, nor have I seen enough information to suggest why we would change this. But,
Gotta keep an eye on it,
yeah,
for sure. Thank you.
The budget also calls for 1.4 million in technology investments. As you'll note, the IT strategic plan has a lot of work in it. The first priority of that plan is the replacement of the financial system, which will be a large cost. And we anticipate phase one to be, about $1 million of that 1.4 million, but that would just be the first half of that investment. We'll also do some network infrastructure and some other improvements identified in the plan, as well as our normal PC replacements, copier replacements, things of that nature.
And I wasn't at the meeting last Monday, but I think you got the report from Barry Dunn, and the financial system that we have today, I purchased as the interim city administrator in 1989. I think it's well past its due. I know Bill was around for the use of that thing, and it's a cumbersome system. It works okay for us, but it's time to sink our teeth into a new system.
We're excited about it.
Tyrannosaurus Rex has a ring to it.
Green screen can wear on you after a while.
Exactly. And green bar
I see it in my
paper.
sleep. Here's a table of major fund balances, and obviously we'll probably talk further about this in our session on Saturday, but just to point out, the general fund balance, we're ending both years right around 35%. Road use fund balance, 45% this year, down to 39% next year, both within that new reserve policy that we set last summer. The exciting thing here is a little bit further down the page, I'll point out gaming and sales tax. Gaming revenue has recovered from the bottoms of the pandemic. And also, we've found less of a need for that to support operations as the general fund has taken on a little bit more. Palmer Hills isn't needing as much as it was before. So we're actually anticipating that fund balance to grow to $2 million this year and a little over 2.2 by the end of next year. Couple that with sales tax, again, increased revenue there in result of the census. That'll grow to $2 million. We're going to spend a lot of it on those vehicles and technology investments and projects in the CIP like parks. So we'll draw that down to 1.1 million, but just 3 or 4 years ago, we were under $500,000. So as of June 30th of 2023, you have $3.3 million kind of, available to you there as discretionary funds to be spent however.
Are we continuing to do that, depending less on gaming? Or we continue to do that?
We didn't in this particular add an additional nickel because we felt we were okay from a direction standpoint.
Yeah.
But I would advocate that rather than draw down gaming to do that you would continue that strategy. We just didn't need to do it this year with all the growth we had all the way around the horn. But eventually,
Our intention
yes.
is to keep that.
Correct, correct.
Jason, I was told today, oddly enough by Robbie, that we're actually supposed to be getting part of the gambling money from Sportsbook. Says it's in the bill.
Oh, here we go.
Is it not there?
No,
I have not heard that.
we've never heard that.
All right.
That would be great.
That'd be awesome
That'd be
if we were able to get
fantastic.
Sportsbook. But Sportsbook was written without cities with facilities in mind. It all went to the state.
All right, that's what I thought. That's what we were under the impression of, and he says that
We'd love
there's
we would love that to come forward.
supposed to be in there.
Another catch-up check.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, state captured all of that.
That's what I thought. Absolutely. But he thought that he said he passed it.
Yeah, that should be fixed for sure.
Yeah,
Need to get some people at the state level that will take care of that for us.
yeah, yeah.
Well, and as I'm on the SCRA, and that we've been pretty vocal about our disappointment of not having more money to put back in the cities, and it's not there. So
Yeah, but neither the not-for-profits nor the cities in which those gaming licenses existed were any part of consideration of the sportsbook bill. All the state taxes go solely to the state.
Yep.
There's no increase to the SCRA and no increase to the city. So we'd love to have a little bit of that action. That'd be awesome.
Jason, on that past slide, another thing I ask every year. If we were to be within our original policy of debt margin, even knock it down to 25%, for instance, we're at 35, 10% of the expenditures, would that get us what on the levy if we were to return it? Is that a nickel? Is that a dime? Is that 15 cents?
Let me,
If you know.
quick math, Your Honor.
Take your time, no pressure.
So it's right about exactly $3 million. A nickel is worth about $130,000.
Da-na-na.
810.
A little over $1 on the list.
But it'd be one time. You only do it 1 year. Can't do it every year.
You're right.
You wouldn't, yeah, but you'd have it there, and you still have the rest of the,
Or you could do it over a period of time.
or you could do a nickel or a dime that gets this over time back to where we thought we needed it prior to the pandemic, understanding there's a change, but still yet, we got up to 46%. I mean, that's way too high.
It just so happens, we have kind of, and obviously this is up for discussion Saturday, but we've kind of got that $3 million that we introduced to you last week or 2 weeks ago, kind of earmarked for some potential projects that are kind of percolating on the horizon.
Right?
So right now, the recommendation is kind of to sit on it and see if those projects come to fruition. But no, your point is well taken.
And we can certainly talk about that Saturday. Fully realize, Mr. Plain, that I'm the one who says, that's a great project, let's put some money into it. Yeah, but give it back to the taxpayers. You're supposed to be Aladdin and make this stuff work.
Thank you very much. We always appreciate your help and advice.
Any way I can be.
Advise and consent.
Yes, anything I can do to help.
I think that the bottom line is, though, you have very healthy fund balances in all of those funds. And I think that speaks to the prudence that you've made. Although we look a little higher on the debt service fund than others, your overall levy is as good or better than almost any place of any city anywhere. And these fund balances demonstrate to Moody's your fiscal soundness. In the event something were to hit the fan, you have the capacity to dip into those funds and take care of that in any manner. Or if you decide that you want to infuse one time, to Councilmember Webster's point, some of these monies go into a capital project fund for a couple of streets that you want to get done quicker or before maybe federal money comes along, you would have that discretion. So there's a multitude of ways to look at that.
Right. And due to that prudence, we are moving forward to a place where we're amassing more of that one-time money as we're pulling out of gaming and not using it for those operational shortfalls. So we have the best of both worlds. Thank you very much. Now it's time to kind of decide what we're going to do with that, and can that be taxpayer relief, or is that a project that also provides taxpayer relief because it, takes something and makes it something new that pays taxes or whatnot? Okay.
I'm anxious for our Moody's call next week, because you look at these fund balances now and you look at the levy rate, you look at the valuation increases and the census increases, and it points to me that this would be a perfect time for a rating increase from the AA2 to a AA1. I don't see us going to AAA for a long time, but to go to AA1, I think we trade at AAA, but this would, in my mind, this is what we've been doing all this for.
Right.
Okay.
So I'm really gonna lobby hard with the Moody's folks that it's time for us to look at rating increase.
Super. Sorry for the interruption. Let's go to the next slide, number 22.
Got just a kind of a pie chart look at our revenue mix. No hard numbers here, but it gives you the idea of just where all of our financing comes from. And the bulk of that is obviously property taxes and charges for services. Those pay for basically city operations to the tune of about $96 million, everything everywhere for this fiscal year. So. Major revenues, this is, again, just kind of a table view of that previous slide. But again, property taxes and charges for services are at the top of the list, making up 33 million and 25 million of the property pie. But local option sales tax, I'll point out, that's, again, the census was good to us for a number of reasons, but local option sales tax might be sitting at the top of that list. And we expect about $7.5 million in 22-23. You'll notice it's down from the 8.1 in the current year, and that's just due to the catch-up payment. Like I said, we had another significant catch-up payment, unexpected. But based on what the Iowa Department of Revenue is telling us they'll be paying us this year, it looks more like a $7.5 million number.
But if you take that 7.5 and you look at the actual of 6.1, you can see that increase there, which is combination of the increase from the census, but also the increase where we were collecting on sales, internet sales, from 18-19, where you were at 5 million. You probably picked up $1 million in internet sales, and you probably picked up another $1 million to $1.5 million based on internet sales and census increases. So.
Building permit history, you know, I don't need to belabor the numbers here, but I put this here because I can't speak enough about how important growth and, you know, residential building, commercial building, it drives our economic engine, and this year was no different. I've added a column for multifamily homes because they're making up such a bigger piece of the pie now. But if you go back to 2020 and look at all permits, first of all, 8,000 permits, crazy high, mostly due to the derecho and hailstorm. But the value of $239 million, which is certainly an outlier. We haven't had a year like that in any of the years on this list. But it included 3 senior living complexes, which aren't even on the tax rolls yet. They won't be taxed until fiscal year 23-24. We estimate, based on the values of those, those taxes will add up to $300,000 just to the general fund. So that's really exciting, right?
And we added a new category. We added the new multifamily homes in there so that you can see that kind of gives a perspective, not just single family. So that helps.
Here's our expenditures pie. You can see the percentages of expenditures by service area. And I'll point out here at almost 27% capital projects, it just goes back to that earlier point. We have prioritized investment in our capital infrastructure, and you can see that by how big of a portion of the pie chart capital projects takes here. About all we need to cover there. Finally, here's the chart. The 38 cities, everything everywhere, property taxes, sewer fees, stormwater fees, solid waste fees. In the current year, this is not based on the fee increases that we introduced to you tonight. This is current year numbers for all of these cities. You can see Bettendorf is, what do we count, in 13th?
Yep, 13th.
At $2,507 on that average $266,000 home. The average cost of city services among these 38 is $2,877, so we're about $370 below average. And you can see where the other cities land with all of these charges put together. If you take that cost, that $2,500 cost, and compare it against household income, Bettendorf is asking for about 3% of its residents' household income. On average, these cities are asking for about 5.25%. But you can see at the far right end, they're up at the 9 and 10%. Those cities are asking for 9 and 10% of their residents' income. So just another measure. Again, I wouldn't look at any one of these charts in a vacuum. I think context is important here, but we try to provide a full look. And to wrap up, here's your calendar of events for the budget going forward. We'll get together again on Saturday, bright and early, for our budget work session. The following, Tuesday, March 1st, we'll hold a public hearing and adoption of the maximum property tax dollars resolution. That's that new step that the state is requiring. This will be our third year of doing this extra public hearing. And then finally, on March 15th, we'll hold the public hearing to adopt the budget at our regular council meeting. So,
And I made a little administrative decision today. We had in there a separate courtesy public meeting on March 3rd scheduled. And to be honest with you, generally we had one person and Jerry show up for all these meetings. And I think Jerry's had enough briefing that we don't need to show up for one person, given that the state has mandated that we now have 2 public hearings.
I was
We
there
think-
last year.
Oh, sorry. Lisa, Jerry, and
30 years of
one person.
talking to one person,
Yeah.
you decided it wasn't
Well,
efficient?
yeah. It wasn't
Attaboy.
30 years. It wasn't 30 years. We didn't have that for full 30 years. So now that the state, in its wisdom, gave us the second public hearing, we thought we had to take advantage of the wisdom of the state in this regard. And that should be plenty, unless you direct me to put that back on the calendar.
If the person calls, chat with he or she. Otherwise, I think it's a good
Well,
idea.
it's never been the same person, with
Oh,
the exception,
no.
Jerry's been the lone star.
Well, he gets special treatment now. He got himself elected.
That's right.
Well, technology allows
right.
anyone to view any of these meetings anyway, so it's just the input that they may have.
Correct.
Which is, there's plenty of avenues for public input as well, so.
Correct.
you should have the budget review document at your spots. It does look a little different this year. We took a little bit different approach and grouped things more by department. So if you want to, you will open the police tab, you will know everything you need to know about the police budget, rather than having to kind of fish around different parts of the book to find their requests. So get used to that. Reach out all week with questions, but we'll get together on Saturday.
And I don't anticipate that we would take the full day. I frankly think, based on our briefings, based on what we know, we think we can probably conclude it in 4 to 5 hours. We got breakfast scheduled at 7:30 a.m. So get here, to have breakfast, start right at 8 o'clock. There'll be snacks. We've scheduled a pizza ordering.
I love pizza. That's my downfall.
At
Work for
11.
Shell.
But I think frankly, I would be shocked if we weren't done by 1 o'clock or even earlier. So I think we can get through it. And to Jason's point, I think you're well adept and versed at this. That you can ask us the questions you need. We feel comfortable. It's, you know a lot about this already based on history of everybody at the table, that we can make some easy decisions here about where we're going. So we're pleased with what we presented, and contact us during the week and we can answer any of the individual questions you might have. And we'll look forward to our discussion on Saturday. Unless you have any questions now.
Any questions now?
So if we move to approve the budget as presented tonight, this meeting Saturday could last 5 minutes. Keep that in mind.
Yes. Yeah, all you need is a second.
So moved.
With no further questions, thank you both very much. We look forward to seeing you at 7:30 for breakfast, at 8 o'clock for presentations and discussions on Saturday.
All the department heads will be here to answer any questions you have on Saturday as well. And it's casual Saturday, very casual. Jeans are appropriate. So we'll
We have our
talk,
budget binders here.
if you want to, yeah. I don't know if we have any other, but we'll move them appropriately. Just put your name on the inside page somewhere.
End up keeping this one anyway. This goes on a.
Yeah.
Any department heads have any questions? No, Your Honor, we're well prepared.
All righty. Excellent work. Thank you very much. Saturday it is.
All you gotta do is announce you're adjourned, then we'll knock anything off.
We stand adjourned.